Hello YouTube. Bane666 here. Okay folks, take some slow deep breaths, and find your inner zen, in preparation for this, as it will make your blood boil. You have been warned. Are you ready? This is an article that appeared in The Guardian. It's titled, 109 Women Prosecuted for False Rape Claims in 5 Years, Say Campaigners. Now, do you think this article thinks this is a good thing, or a bad thing? Let's continue. Charity accuses authorities in the UK of pursuing cases against rape complainants more aggressively than other countries. What they actually mean here is false rape complainants, not actual victims of rape. I'm sure this was just a typo on their behalf, and they weren't trying to poison the well by placing false rape accusers and actual rape victims in the same basket, right? I mean, that would be incredibly insulting to actual rape victims, wouldn't it? Not to mention those who have been falsely accused. It has to be a typo, right? Because the media wouldn't sink that low, would they? The Director of Public Prosecutions is due to publish a statement on the case of Eleanor de Freitas, a rape complainant who killed herself on the eve of a prosecution for perverting the course of justice. So the article shows us the pretty face of an accused false rape accuser, who committed suicide. This is obviously done to create sympathy for false rape accusers, who clearly are the real victims here. But let's have a look at Miss de Freitas a bit closer. From the Daily Mail. Why did CPS hound my girl to death over a false rape claim? Father's agony after suicide 3 days before trial. A young woman who told police she was raped but killed herself after she was accused of making up the ordeal was hounded to death, her father said today. Eleanor de Freitas, 23, was so terrified of giving evidence she took her own life on April 7 this year, 3 days before her trial was to start at Southwark Crown Court, South East London. Police believed the vulnerable A-grade student, who suffered from a psychiatric illness, had told the truth about the rape when she reported it, but decided there was not enough evidence to bring a successful conviction, so closed the case. But the Crown Prosecution Service put Miss de Freitas, who had bipolar disorder, on trial after the alleged perpetrator spent vast sums of money pursuing the matter. So it should be noted here that neither parties have been found guilty or innocent in a court of law. There are two possibilities here. The first is that her story is true, she was raped, but there was a lack of evidence. And her rapist then pursued her through the court system to get revenge for being accused. The second possibility is she made the story up, falsely accused an innocent man, and he then pursued the case in an attempt to clear his name, which had been dragged through the mud. None of us know what actually happened. Personally though, if I was in the position of the accused rapist, and I was actually guilty, the last thing I would be doing is pursuing the case once it had been dropped. Doing so could reveal some previously undisclosed evidence, or backfire in some other way. However, if I was innocent, I would want to clear my name any way possible. But this is just my way of thinking, and we have no way of knowing if the accused rapist would think the same way. I also have to mention her bipolar mental illness, which most probably contributed to her suicide, but could have contributed to her false rape claim, if in fact the claim was false. I have a close friend who is bipolar, and during an episode he isn't himself, to say the least. His rational thinking is distorted. He's more likely to take risks, or do things he normally wouldn't. Not to mention hypersexuality. Is it possible that she was going through a manic state when she slept with the accused rapist? Could she have rationalized it as rape later on? Who knows? This is of course just speculation, not fact. But I think it's important to at least ask these questions, considering we have only heard one side of the story. And doubtfully we'll ever know the actual truth. So I don't think this is the perfect case for The Guardian to start with. Sure, it's bound to elicit sympathy, as it's no doubt designed to do, but it's easily countered by cases where falsely accused men have committed suicide. For example, once again from the Daily Mail. A schoolboy is believed to have killed himself after being accused of raping a girl when he told police about drug dealers in his town. Tom Acton, 16, became the victim of cruel taunts and was attacked by Thomas Greenwood, 18, when the lies started spreading in Poynton, Cheshire. He was due to give evidence at Greenwood's trial but was found critically ill at home days before the court hearing at Crewe Magistrates Court. Tom was attacked in the street, targeted on Facebook, and angry youths turned up at his house as lies spread that he had tied a girl to a tree and raped her. And from the Daily Record, Stephen McLaughlin was 23 when he killed himself after being falsely accused of rape. He was a gentle, intelligent and dignified man who had been damaged irreparably by the lies of a vindictive young woman. Stephen would have been 40 this year, perhaps a father and husband enjoying the love and the life he deserved. I think of Stephen every time I see a case like that of Lindsay Attridge, 31, who falsely accused two strangers of raping her in an attempt to win back her boyfriend. She picked two men at random on Facebook and threw a grenade into their world. Last week, Attridge was convicted and sentenced to 200 hours of community service. Stephen's accuser was a former girlfriend and she had sex willingly with him on his birthday. She too admitted that she had cried rape to make her new boyfriend jealous. Police had picked up Stephen in the middle of the night and subjected him to an intimate and degrading medical examination. The next morning when he returned home, he vomited, wept and repeated with incredulity the word, rapist. And these are far from the only cases. But back to the article from The Guardian. At least 109 women have been prosecuted in the last 5 years for making false rape allegations in the UK, according to campaigners who are calling for an end to what they claim is the aggressive pursuit of such cases. I have to ask, why would you call for an end to the prosecution of those who make false claims? They waste time and resources that could be used to convict actual rapists. They create doubt over actual rape cases. And they potentially destroy the lives of the accused. Why should these scumbags get a free pass? Wouldn't no consequences just encourage more false allegations? Creating more victims, and wasting more time and resources? Next. On Tuesday, the charity Women Against Rape, War is taking its campaign to the House of Commons, where some of those who have been jailed for lying about rape allegations will speak out against their treatment by the authorities. The vast majority of the convictions in the last 5 years, 98 out of 109, involved prosecutions for perverting the course of justice, which carries a maximum life jail term, rather than the lesser offense of wasting police time, which has a maximum tariff of 6 months in prison or a fine. And exactly how many of them receive the maximum of life in jail? I would bet, none. In fact, I suspect in the majority of cases they just received slap on the wrist. Next. A U.S. law professor, who will be speaking at the Commons, said the UK stance on false allegations is more aggressive than in countries such as the United States, Canada and Australia. Professor Lisa Avalos, of the University of Arkansas, said false allegations in the U.S. were dealt with as a misdemeanor offense, not a felony, and most women were not jailed if found guilty. So in other words, the United States, Canada, and Australia have fallen behind the UK. Next. In the course of my research I have not found any country that pursues these cases against women rape complainants in the way the UK does. The UK has an unusual approach and I think their approach violates human rights, she said. I have to ask, how exactly does giving someone a fair trial, finding them guilty based on evidence, and then sending them to jail, violate human rights? Of course, she only thinks this way when the guilty are female. It almost seems that she has no problem believing that men are capable of rape, but she is incapable of believing that women are capable of lying. It almost seems that she has no problem believing that men are automatically guilty with just an accusation, but she is incapable of believing that women are guilty, even when proven so. And this is meant to be equality? Different standards, based on your gender? Seriously? Let me state my position clearly before moving on. No matter the crime, or the gender of the accused, or the gender of the supposed victim, I believe in a fair trial, with adequate legal representation for all parties involved. And that a guilty verdict should only be found when there is adequate evidence. If someone is found guilty, then they should be punished appropriately for their crime. This standard should be used, regardless of the crime, and regardless of the genders involved. Guilt or innocence should not be based solely on someone's word, and the degree of punishment should not be based on their gender. This standard, if used correctly, is the fairest system for everyone. Yet it's this standard that feminists wish to do away with. Next. In 2012-13 there were 3,692 prosecutions for rape in England and Wales, resulting in 2,333 convictions. War says it is supporting several women who say they were forced into retracting their rape complaint by police and then told they would be prosecuted for perverting the course of justice. If this is the case, then those police responsible should face consequences. But this needs to be proven in a court of law, and does not excuse those women who are actually guilty of false allegations, and have been proven so. Just because some rape allegations are false, it doesn't mean that actual rapists, who have been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, should be freed. That exact same standard applies to those making false allegations. Next. But Professor Claire Ferguson, a forensic criminologist from the University of New England in New South Wales, Australia, said it was not the norm to prosecute women for false allegations and that only those in the most egregious cases were charged, often where the accused man had spent time in custody. Let me be clear once again. If you waste police time and resources, undermine the accounts of actual rape victims, and victimize an innocent man, or men, then you deserve a punishment. If for no other reason than a deterrent. We have laws against drink driving here in Australia. Some people still drive drunk, but most people are cautious, they keep track of how much they drink, or have a designated driver, or catch a taxi, or public transport. Because there are consequences for being caught. Imagine for a moment, if those consequences were removed, even though drink driving was still illegal. Do you think the number of drunk drivers would go up, or down? If a serious crime has little to no consequences, then people are more likely to commit it. If you don't prosecute proven false rape accusers, then you encourage more people to make false allegations. Next. There have been cases in Australia where people have been accused, then nothing ever happens to the accuser, even though the police believe the report is indeed false. This can be hugely problematic and has led to many personal and professional issues for the accused, including suicide, even when the police have proven that they did nothing wrong and are not a sex offender, she said. Which is exactly why proven false rape claims need to be prosecuted. Next. Sandra Allen's daughter Leila Ibrahim was 7 months pregnant when she was jailed for 3 years for perverting the course of justice, after reporting a sexual assault by 2 strangers. My daughter still maintains she was attacked, said Allen, who will be addressing the public meeting. We found out that within days of her reporting the attack the police started investigating my daughter. Okay, so once again we have a case that's designed to elicit sympathy. I would argue that her pregnancy is irrelevant to her guilt or innocence. So let's have a closer look at her case. Once again, from the Daily Mail. Wicked woman who cried rape is jailed for 3 years despite being 7 months pregnant. A young woman who ripped her clothes and gave herself a black eye to support her rape lies was yesterday jailed for 3 years. Leila Ibrahim, described as wicked by a judge, is 7 months pregnant and will give birth in prison. Her false rape claims started a £150,000 police investigation in which 4 students were arrested and subjected to humiliating examinations. They were questioned for nearly 3 days, during which time one attempted suicide. They were later victims of public abuse, and one has since left the area. But the 22-year-old woman had invented the whole incident in order to teach her friends a lesson after they abandoned her at the end of a night out, a judge said. The 4 wrongly accused, 2 of whom were under 16, are still suffering as a result of the stigma caused by the false allegations, Carlisle Crown Court was told. All were subject to name-calling and abuse in the street following their arrests, with one describing the ordeal as torture. Another said he was devastated by the harrowing experience and had been unable to eat or sleep. One suspect complained, "We were treated like shit and not a stint of an apology." Even the doctor in the case described the examinations as intimate, embarrassing and uncomfortable. A senior police source said the 4 were still really struggling with the aftermath of the case. Detectives had initially taken Ibrahim's account that she had been raped or sexually assaulted on her way home from a night out seriously, launching a massive manhunt involving 40 officers. The frilly dress and leggings she had been wearing had apparently been ripped in the attack, clumps of her hair had been hacked off, and she had a black eye and scratches to her breasts and legs. But police became suspicious, and tests showed the Libyan-born former children's holiday rep had ripped her own clothes and inflicted the injuries herself to back up her fabricated claims. After failing to withdraw her allegation, she was charged with perverting the course of justice and convicted. Judge Paul Batty, QC, told her such false allegations made it harder for women who genuinely had been raped to secure their attackers' convictions. Not only did these false allegations have an effect on 4 young men, but also a considerable effect on your own family, he said. You were convicted on clear and compelling evidence of wickedly fabricating a grave crime, causing countless anguish to all involved. Your behavior was thoroughly irresponsible and some may say wicked. I am entirely clear in this case that you craved attention and wanted your friends to think they left you and you were then attacked. You wanted to teach them a lesson. Ibrahim, who had been denied bail following her conviction, smiled and waved at her family as she was led into the dock. Her mother Sandra covered her face with her hands following the sentence, calling out, "It's okay, darling, we'll always be with you." The family insisted they would fight forever to clear her name. Ibrahim, who came to Britain from Libya with her family when she was 9, worked at a petrol station at the time of the supposed attack in Carlisle on January 4 last year. She had argued with a male friend who refused to lend her the money for a taxi home after a night out drinking. She told police 2 youths had knocked her to the ground and assaulted her as she walked home. She claimed she grabbed a pair of scissors from her handbag, only for one of the pair to snatch them and cut off a clump of her hair. Crown Prosecutor Linda Vance said, "The sort of case, where someone fabricates an allegation of sexual assault, and continues with that allegation, is very rare. I find it strange that The Guardian would cite this case. It's pretty clear that she is the perfect example of everything I have been talking about. She wasted police time and resources. She undermined real rape victims. And she devastated the lives of some innocent boys. Provided she had a fair trial, she should be locked up for a long time. Her serious actions should have consequences." Yet somehow this is The Guardian's poster child for why false claimants shouldn't be punished. Most strange. Like I said earlier, maybe the fact she is pregnant is meant to elicit our sympathies? Anyway, back to The Guardian. The police trot out these words that victims will be believed, but I don't think they ever bothered investigating what Leila was saying from the beginning. "I will fight for her innocence to my dying day. What happened to her was beyond horrific. She suffered that night, she suffered in prison, and she is still suffering." I guess this is the typical response from a parent. I can understand wanting to believe your child, but that doesn't mean her claims stack up. She says she doesn't believe the police ever bothered to investigate Leila's claims from the beginning. Yet the Daily Mail article I just presented claims that her false claims cost a £150,000 investigation. And a massive manhunt was launched involving 40 officers. Not to mention the questioning, and invasive examination of the accused. Apparently that constitutes not taking her claim seriously. I have to ask then, to what lengths the police would have gone if they did take her claim seriously. But of course, like I said, I can understand these claims from a parent, but obviously the emotional response from a mother does not constitute evidence. Next. Ibrahim's lawyer, Nigel Richardson, is preparing to submit her case to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, which pursues miscarriages of justice. And I have no problem with this, as long as the court remains evidence-based. Anyone who is convicted should have a right to appeal. And their case should be judged on its merit. Unlike the appeal to emotion in this article. Next. He said, these cases seem to be pursued with a particular vehemence by the police and CPS, Crown Prosecution Service. It's as though lying to the police, as they would see it, demands a really heavy reaction. There comes a moment when the woman goes from being a victim in the eyes of the police to a suspect. She may not even know that has happened. So in other words, wasting £150,000, and the time of 40 officers, as well as putting 4 innocent boys through hell, really shouldn't be seen as a big deal, if you are female, and craving attention. Need I say more? These idiots are making my case for me. Next. Recent figures from Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, the police watchdog, revealed that more than a quarter of rape and sexual offences were not being recorded as crimes by forces, and rape is a hugely underreported offence. Okay, so the question here is, why? No doubt many feminists will claim that the police just don't care. I think this is nonsense. If rapes and sexual offences are not being recorded as crimes, I can think of 2 possible reasons. The first is lack of evidence. This could be due to a delay in reporting, or maybe a case where one person's word is against another's. The second is unproven false claims and false accusations. So if a quarter are not being recorded as a crime, then that means potentially 1/4 of cases lack enough evidence to proceed, or 1/4 of cases are in fact false. Obviously these are the extremes of these 2 numbers, and logically the true percentage of each lies somewhere in between. And we have no way of knowing exactly where. Next. Campaigners say that context has to be taken into account when police and prosecutors decide to pursue women for apparently lying about sexual attacks. The Director of Public Prosecutions, Alison Saunders, is scheduled to publish a statement on the case of Eleanor de Freitas, a rape complainant who killed herself on the eve of a prosecution for perverting the course of justice. And I've already covered this. Of course they leave out some important details, but let's move on. Next. Lisa Longstaff, from War, said, "It's appalling that when over 90% of rapists are getting away with it and 2 women a week are killed by partners or ex-partners, women who report violence are being imprisoned." Oh wow, talk about misrepresenting the case. Women are not being imprisoned for reporting violence, they are instead being imprisoned for falsely accusing innocent people of crimes. And I should point out, that not all who are guilty of that even get imprisonment, many only get a slap on the wrist. Need I mention, Elizabeth Jones? From The Telegraph. Compulsive liar jailed after 11 false rape claims in decade. A compulsive liar made almost a dozen false claims that she was raped in nearly a decade after making her first complaint at the age of 13, a court has heard. Elizabeth Jones, 22, admitted she lied about the latest rape allegation because she did not like the man she accused of attacking her, Southampton Crown Court was told. Her latest victim, who cannot be named for legal reasons, was arrested and questioned for 9 hours before being released without charge. After a judge jailed her for 16 months, it emerged today that she made her first complaint in 2004, aged just 13, before alleging other men had attacked her over the next 9 years. In 2009 she was given a 10-month detention and training order for a similar offense. Between 2005 and 2007 she had made 8 other allegations, which police investigated, but she was never charged. There is a history of her making false allegations of this nature, and this is the 11th incident, Jenny Rickman, prosecuting, said. Police had to take her allegations seriously and carried out an appropriate investigation. She was later arrested and accepted she had lied about being raped. She said she did it because she did not like him. Jones admitted 1 count of attempting to pervert the course of justice. Jailing her for 16 months, Judge Derwin Hope said her offenses had caused a terrible emotional experience to her alleged attacker. After the previous 10 false allegations, Judge Hope felt that it was the final straw and had no choice but to sentence her to 16 months in prison. So the final straw took 11 false rape allegations. But let's look at what Lisa Longstaff, from War, said again. Women who report violence are being imprisoned. Really? This is kind of like saying, innocent men are being imprisoned just for having sex, when referring to rapists. This is ideological bullshit. Where only males can be guilty, and only females victims. No matter the evidence or the circumstances. This is what 40 years of feminism has brought us. Not the shattering of gender roles, but a new set, based on the hatred of males. Next. From Rotherham to Westminster, Police dismiss victims and press them to retract their allegations. We have repeatedly raised with the former and present DPP that biased and negligent rape investigations result in miscarriages of justice. Really? So police don't care about actual rape victims? Really? I assume this would be both male and female police, right? Now, I don't claim that the police are perfect, and as with any job, you will get some who are lazy, incompetent, or corrupt. But I find it very hard to believe that police, across the UK, are actively persuading actual rape victims to retract their statements. Why exactly would they do this? Do they enjoy a bit of rape themselves? Are they looking out for the boys? Patriarchy? Yeah, sounds like bullshit to me. In this day and age, I suspect cops are very cautious when dealing with rape victims, as they are likely to be attacked by the media for just doing their job. You know, investigating a claim, as opposed to just taking someone's word for it. So no, I don't think cops are pressuring actual rape victims to retract their allegations. I do however suspect they are doing this to cases of false allegations, where there is clear and undeniable evidence. For example, from The Guardian, trainee barrister jailed for false rape claims. A trainee barrister has been jailed after being found guilty of falsely accusing her former boyfriend of a series of rapes and assaults. Sentencing Rhiannon Brooker, 30, to 3.5 years, the judge Julian Lambert said she had acted in an utterly wicked way and argued that false claims made it more difficult for real rape victims to be believed in court. There was anger from women's rights campaigners who claimed that such severe sentences would put off rape victims from going to the police for fear they could face prosecution if allegations were not proven. There were cries of shame and miscarriage of justice as Brooker's sentence was handed down. Brooker's former partner Paul Fensom, a railway signalman, was held behind bars for 37 days after she accused him of a string of rapes and assaults. While in custody, Fensom was held in a secure wing after rumors went around that he was a pedophile. He has since received £38,000 compensation. Alibis, evidence from Fensom's phone and his work shift patterns undermine Brooker's accounts. Injuries were judged to have been self-inflicted and the police dropped their investigations into Fensom and turned their attention on Brooker. So this is how an investigation should be carried out. The police investigated her claims, followed and examined the evidence, and found her claims to be false. Unfortunately, an innocent man had to spend 37 days in jail. I don't hear feminists defending his rights, strangely. But let's look at another case. From the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Judge sentences Michigan woman to 5 years in prison for false rape report. Judge sentenced a tormented and disturbed Michigan woman to at least 5 years in prison Friday for falsely accusing 2 men of rape, a punishment that came just days after she pleaded no contest to a cancer scam in a separate case that also challenged her credibility. St. Clair County Judge Daniel Kelly exceeded the guidelines, saying it would be a travesty of justice to sentence Sarah Ellen to less. In December, Ellen, 38, was convicted of making up a story about 2 men attacking her at her Lexington home, 80 miles northeast of Detroit. The jury also convicted her of tampering with evidence by using makeup to create what looked like bruises. Ellen's integrity has been shattered after years of being considered a sympathetic figure in eastern Michigan. She accepted thousands of dollars from supporters and was treated by a hospice service for 2 years after claiming to have end-stage cervical cancer that had spread throughout her body. But state police found no evidence confirming a cancer diagnosis, and Ellen on Monday pleaded no contest to fraud in Sanila County. This is a tormented and disturbed woman who will go to extraordinary lengths to wreak havoc upon other individuals, potentially subjecting them to life in prison in order to gain sympathy and notoriety for herself, the judge said Friday. Yeah, you heard that right. She created false bruises with makeup. But I'm sure Lisa Longstaff, from WAR, would consider this legitimate evidence, and judge the police as evil for arresting her. Not to mention her fake cancer scam. But let's look at some more details. Ellen had accused a construction company owner and a mental health worker of bursting into her home and raping her after she drove her children to school in 2012. They attended the same church as her ex-husband. The judge said Ellen created her own injuries and even carved a vulgarity on her arm. Kelly noted that the well-respected men could have been charged with rape except for their airtight alibis, and doubts about the story by police. Both men spoke before Ellen was sentenced and said their reputations had been harmed in their small communities. The public first learned about Ellen in 2003 when she agreed to be featured in Sarah's Story, an award-winning series in the Port Huron Times-Herald, in which she talked about being raped in daylight in the parking lot of a major retail store in 2001. Her alleged attacker, James Grissom, was sentenced to at least 15 years in prison. But Grissom was released from prison in 2012 after a judge threw out his rape conviction. Police in Bakersfield, California, said Ellen made up rape allegations during a 2001 trip there, evidence that wasn't available to Grissom to challenge her credibility when he was on trial. Grissom, 56, was in court Friday, sitting in the first row directly behind Ellen. He called her sentence a slap on the wrist. "Yeah, you heard that right, this wasn't her first false allegation, and an innocent man ended up spending 11 years in prison." But let's look at another case. Once again from the Daily Mail. Wife cried rape to keep her 6-year affair secret just a month after her wedding. A cheating wife who cried rape in a bid to keep a 6-year affair secret from her husband just a month after their wedding has avoided jail. Unfaithful Jessica Gore, 32, had only been married to partner Darren, 41, for 4 weeks when she arrived home later than expected last September. The newlywed mother of 2 claimed she had been attacked by a stranger as she walked home from babysitting for a friend. Her worried husband immediately told her to contact police and report the crime. Her bogus claim came as police investigated a number of other reported rapes in her local area. But detectives quickly exposed her lies and found she had sneaked off to meet lover Matthew Richards, just a short walk from her marital home. Police then uncovered a series of texts on her phone and Gore admitted she had been cheating on her partner for 6 years. Gore admitted perverting the course of justice and was given a suspended prison sentence of 8 months, suspended for a year. Judge Heather Norton told her, "This wasn't just a vague allegation. You gave an incredible amount of detail. This was all at a time when there was an ongoing investigation into rapes in the Ashford area." She left the house at 8:15 p.m. and texted her husband saying she had arrived at the property. But in fact she was in the arms of her lover, who the court heard she had had an on-off relationship for more than 6 years. Mr. Scott said, Jessica Gore was lying to her husband at that stage. In fact she had arrived at the home of a Matthew Richards. Mr. Gore, washed and shaved, put the children to bed and settled down to watch a film. By this time Mrs. Gore was having sex with her lover. At 10:10 p.m. Gore left her lover and arrived home 10 minutes later in floods of tears claiming she had been raped. On the advice of police her husband bagged her clothes before detectives arrived to question her. Mr. Scott added, she gave the police an allegation of stranger rape after being confronted by a man who she had struck. She had then been shoved to the ground and her trousers and underwear were pulled down and she had then been raped. But the court heard that her story began unraveling when her friend revealed that she had not been at her house. Officers then examined Gore's mobile phone and discovered sexual texts between her and her lover. Gore told the court she was upset at herself and said things had spiraled out of control. She also claimed she had gone to her lover's house under threat as he was going to tell her husband about the affair. These are just a handful of cases where a claim was made. Police took the claim seriously, then set about investigating and gathering evidence before finding the original claim to be false. This is how the system should work. Yet war, Women Against Rape, and other such ideological groups want a woman's word to be enough, based on nothing more than her gender. I mean, after all, women never lie, right? And for the record, I'm not suggesting all women are liars, just that women are capable of lying, just like men are capable of lying. I'm talking about human nature. But back to The Guardian. The CPS said it did not collate figures on how many individuals have been prosecuted for allegedly making false rape allegations. A CPS review over 17 months from January 2011 to May 2012 revealed there had been 44 individuals prosecuted for perverting the course of justice or wasting police time, out of 159 charging decisions. A spokeswoman said, "Cases of perverting the course of justice that involve allegedly false rape allegations are serious but rare. They are usually highly complex and sensitive, often involving vulnerable parties, so any decision to charge is extremely carefully considered and not taken lightly." Vulnerable parties? What exactly defines a vulnerable party? Someone falsely claiming victimhood is not an actual victim, unless she is referring to individuals who are mentally or emotionally disturbed, like Sarah Allen and Elizabeth Jones, both of whom I discussed earlier. Both of whom have a long history of false claims and attention-seeking behavior. These are not normal average people, and it's easy to conclude that they have mental or emotional issues. But does that mean that their behavior should be ignored, and not have consequences? Should they be allowed to continue making false claims? Should they be allowed to continue destroying innocent lives, wasting police time and resources, and undermining actual rape victims? Of course not. Actions like these deserve consequences. Next. Such cases can only be brought where the prosecution can prove that the original rape allegation was false, and the relatively few cases that are brought should not dissuade any potential victim from coming forward to report an assault. And I have to agree with this 100%. Someone should not be charged with making a false allegation unless there is clear evidence that they have done so. And of course, if there is such evidence, then they should be given a fair trial with adequate legal representation. Which is exactly the same thing that should happen to those accused of rape. Someone should not be charged with rape unless there is clear evidence that they have done so. And of course, if there is such evidence, then they should be given a fair trial with adequate legal representation. Innocent women should not be jailed for making false allegations, if there is insufficient evidence. Just as innocent men should not be jailed for rape, if there is insufficient evidence. There needs to be a standard in the legal system, and that standard needs to apply to everyone, regardless of gender, race, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, or whatever else is irrelevant to guilt or innocence. Yet it's those very moral crusaders, the preachers of equality, the self-described feminists, who want to change this based on their ideology. They think a woman's word should be enough, she should always be believed, no matter the evidence, and even if there is overwhelming evidence to show her guilt, well, even then she is still the true victim. They are incapable of judging a case based on its actual merit, based on the evidence, but instead can only see it through the twisted lens of men equal victimizer, woman equals victim. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not fucking equality. You don't start with the biased conclusion, and then work backwards, acknowledging only that which supports your biased conclusion. Rape is an horrendous crime, which destroys lives every day, and those who, after a fair trial, are found guilty, should face serious jail time. But those who make false allegations also destroy lives, not to mention undermine actual rape victims, and waste precious police time and resources that could be used to catch and prosecute actual rapists. And therefore, after a fair trial, if found guilty, should face serious jail time. Wanting a fair and just legal system for everyone, does not make me a rape apologist, as no doubt someone will accuse me. But excusing the behavior of female criminals, based solely on biased feminist ideology, most definitely makes those feminist scum. After all, I have to ask, how many of the innocent men who have been sent to prison over false rape claims, have become rape victims themselves? I think it's a fair question to ask.
KDKA-TV News at 6 in high definition.
What if police showed up at your house in the middle of the night, took you out of bed, and arrested you for a crime that you know you did not commit? Well, if that sounds more like a movie than real life, then you're going to want to hear the story of a man from the South Hills who says that it happened to him.
Not only that, the woman who accused him of raping her now faces charges that she made it all up. New at 6, Andy Sheehan has the interview you'll see only on KDKA.
Last June, Matthew Foligno was asleep in bed at 2 in the morning when there was banging on his door and people shouting his name.
It was the police, and they had their guns drawn. They were shining their flashlights in the windows, and they took me.
Just all out of the blue?
Out of the blue.
A woman named Caitlin Webster told investigators Foligno had stalked, choked, and raped her, and she showed them these neck bruises to prove it. Only problem is, she made it all up.
Complete fiction.
Complete fiction.
But by then, Foligno was in jail looking at 5 to 10 years hard time.
At first I thought, I'm obviously innocent, so they're going to figure this out in a day or so, and I'm going to be out of here, and this is going to be all over, They're going to do their job, and they're going to, figure out the truth and get justice, and that never happened.
Foligno says he met Webster only weeks before, and after a brief fling, decided to end it. But then Webster went to police with a story she would later tell in court, that Foligno came here to the South Park wave pool and called her out into the parking lot. He then drove her to this back lot where he choked and raped her, stopping only when they were discovered by her 2 girlfriends. Then she says he shoved her out of the car and took off.
She made me seem like a bad, horrible person, and I'm not that person at all. I would never do something like this.
Attorney Bill Diffenderfer says police arrested and charged Foligno almost strictly on the basis of the woman's statement.
The police ever talked to these
Never.
friends?
Never.
They never talked to them?
They never corroborated any of her statements or any of her testimony.
So they just took her word?
Correct.
When his investigator contacted the 2 girlfriends, Diffenderfer says the women refuted the whole story, saying Webster had been out all night with another man and didn't want her father to know. The women said those choke marks on her neck turned out to be love bites from that other guy.
It came right to light that this never happened, and they gave the whole story as to the sucker bites. They gave the story as to what they did the night before and the entire day after where this happened, and no one was ever at the wave pool, and they were with the alleged victim. So she wasn't even at the wave pool.
And the Foligno family anger doesn't end with the girl.
It's very disappointing to me that with these kinds of serious cases that clearly destroy people's lives, that more wasn't done to investigate it.
County Police Superintendent Charles Moffitt defended his detectives on the case.
They did what they could do in an instance like this. We had a girl at the hospital saying she was raped. She had marks around her neck.
Moffitt says the detectives did try to corroborate Webster's account, but she said she didn't know the last names of the 2 other girls and couldn't provide their phone numbers. That, says Diffenderfer, should have been another red flag.
To me, it is something that the public needs to know, that this stuff actually does happen, and to me, for the women that really are victims, it really hurts their cases, and that's what's so outrageous about it. Because it damages the true victim.
After interviewing the 2 girlfriends, county police withdrew the charges against Foligno and arrested Webster. She now faces charges of making false statements and perjury for a rape that never happened. In South Park, Andy Sheehan, KDKA TV News.